video. This time, I'm not going to be so positive about Diablo 4. I'm just going to be honest, right? I have made a video last week saying how I think, in terms of a bare bones ARPG, that Diablo 4 could be great, could be the best ARPG on the market, even above Path of Exile. But I have to be honest, I have soured a little bit on Diablo 4 after sinking about 50 or 60 hours into the beta. I've played multiple characters to 25. I've played a hardcore character at 25. I've ran dungeons for a full 10-12 hours on some characters. And I have to be honest, there is some glaring problems that I think potentially can come out of this beta, that hopefully Blizzard can address them, can not fuck it up, and can make changes for the future. Also, we have to remember that the beta only goes up to 25, so we have to take a lot of this with a pinch of salt. I mean, hopefully the issues I have aren't representative of the full game, or hopefully they will be ironed out or patched out by June 6th. I mean, the developers have stated, and Rod Ferguson has stated, that it is all build, but I'm not quite sure, let's be honest. We're talking about 3 problems, big problems in my opinion, that I have with the game, right? And there's going to be one smaller one. It's not a smaller problem, it's just that loads of other streamers, loads of other content creators have talked about this problem in depth. I am going to touch on it, but they've talked about it to the high heavens, and it's been covered so much that I can't really add much to that. I feel like I can add something to these 3 big problems I have personally. I know a lot of people have these problems as well, but I feel like I can definitely add something. Problem number 1 for me, and you've got to remember, this is only a beta, only up to level 25, and we are scrutinizing it to the high heaven, but we do have concerns, right? Itemization and build diversity. Build diversity being the main problem that I have potentially with this game, right? Basic skills right now, in the current state of the game, are unbelievably unbalanced. Unbelievably, right? For example, if you play Druid and you don't spec into Lightning Strike, your basic skill will not do anything. It won't do nothing. Terrible. Even without a legendary, or with a legendary, right? You have to spec it in a Lightning Strike and then Immobilize, right? Because the other ones, it is not viable. Same with the core skills, right? Core skills, again, you have to pretty much spec into Pulverize with the Druid. And if you don't, you're going to be woefully underpowered. I mean, the Sorcerer is pretty good all around, but it's pretty good that Chain Lightning is so much better than everything else in your core skills, and Fireball and Ice is so much stronger, Ice Bolt, than everything else again. Same with the Barbarian. It seems like Rend and Flare, or Rend and Lunging Strike, are so much stronger than everything else. Necromancer, I mean, Bone Spear, Bone Splinter, for some reason, are absolutely S tier. The other ones are still good on the Necromancer, but them two are clearly a step above everything else. And it shouldn't be like that, let's be honest, right? It should be more balanced. There's always going to be meta skills and meta builds in every game like this, but it shouldn't be that obvious that you have to sort of play them skills when it comes to core and basic to have a chance, right? It's just not right. And then on top of that, it gets even worse because when you have legendaries that are mainly tied to them basic skills, you're shoehorned into a build that you might not want to play just because the other ones aren't viable. Like, for example, if you're a Druid, right, you're going to be trying to get legendaries that literally only buff Pulverize. Let's be honest, that only really buff Pulverize. Because you know Pulverize is the only viable skill, and then the only way you can have a Druid that is viable, right now anyway, is to get legendaries that buff Pulverize. Because he's pretty tanky, especially if he uses werewolf form or his werebear form. But that's the only way you can pretty much play Druid and be strong. I mean, there's other ways, sure, but overall, to compete with a sorcerer or necro, which you can't, but to somewhat compete, you have to get ability, you have to get legendaries that have affixes that are tied to pulverize. Same with the barbarian. If you're playing a whirlwind, you just have to get legendaries or collect affixes and imprint them on legendaries that basically buff your whirlwind. There's not much else to it. It's just literally, are you playing whirlwind B or whirlwind A? Like right now, that is the extent of your whirlwind. Are you playing a crit damage whirlwind, or are you playing a crit, like, in fact, there's not even anything else there. It's literally just, you need legendaries that buff your whirlwind with multipliers like Diablo 3, unfortunately, and that is it. Whirlwind B, whirlwind A. Rend A, Rend B. But Rend is only, like, obviously, the only viable build. Barbarian is actually the most diverse class in the beta, in my opinion. I mean, you can play a bleed build with Rend, you can play Whirlwind, and you can play pretty much, I can't remember the name of it now. Upheaval, right? You can play Rend, Upheaval, and Whirlwind, right? And all three of them builds are pretty viable in the Barbarian. He's actually, out of the classes, he's the most fun I had, because it seemed like he had the most diversity in which ways I could go. Now, the problems I have with legendaries overall is that they basically just apply to certain skills, and it's a tie to a skill, and that's a problem, because what will happen is you'll be mid-game and you'll be like, oh, I'm doing the upheaval barb, and then you'll pick up a ridiculous item, right? A ridiculous legendary or even unique that is like, Whirlwind does 300% damage of your base damage on your health or something like that. And then you're like, well, I'm going to have to respec now, because why would I not play a Whirlwind now I've got that item when I'm going to be OP as a Whirlwind? Does that make sense? Like, it's shoehorning you into specific builds that are only viable via the items you get. It's not your build and then the items add to your build. It's, oh, I'm doing this, but then I've picked up a legendary that's going to make me play this way because that legendary buffs that way to play by an astronomical amount. And that's a problem. It's very similar to Diablo 3 in that regard. And I think that is a problem. Like, for example, look at how much more powerful Necromancer and Sorcerer seem to be versus melee classes in the beta. I don't know why. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can get the Barbarian strong if you get certain legendaries. But the Sorcerer and the Necromancer literally require no thought. They don't require legendaries. Corpse Explosion, Bone Spear, Bone Splinter, Necromancer, you don't need nothing. They're so powerful. They're so far ahead. Same with Chain Lightning and Firebolt and Fire Hydra for the Sorcerer. It's so far ahead of everything else in terms of what the other classes have to offer. And it's almost not right. You can almost spec into other legendaries that buff other things with them characters, but then not have to worry about the actual basic and core skills that you're using. So for me, this is a big problem. And I don't even know how Blizzard solve this. Maybe they solve this with rune words that they're bringing into the game. Maybe rune words can almost act like gems from Path of Exile. I'm not saying they rip off Path of Exile, but maybe rune words can basically be a bit like gems where you put 4 or 5 in and you get quick chance, or you get, you know what I mean? You can change your build up in a different way, it can change your skill in a different way, it can make Whirlwind slower or faster, or can make, you know, Whirlwind do something on first hit or last hit. Like, maybe rune words can almost be the answer to Path of Exile's legendaries in 6 link and 5 link. Maybe that's what rune words can do for Diablo 4. I'm just not quite sure Blizzard are going to do that, to be honest. I feel like it might just be adds 10% to this legendary or adds 10% to this. And unfortunately, it's just going to end up with a build diversity that is very similar to Diablo 3, in my opinion. Like, and that's what I'm worried about more than anything for this game, is that the itemization ends up like Diablo 3, where you're shoehorned into playing the build based on the items you get rather than the skills you've selected, which is a big problem. That is a huge problem. But there's not going to be any diversity in builds. It's just going to be, oh, I need this legendary item, so now I'm playing Rend, or now I'm playing Upheaval, or now I'm playing Fire Hydra. Do you know what I mean? Or now I'm playing Rapid Fire with the Rogue. And that's not good. Like, it isn't. For longevity, that is the worst thing. But that, like I said, it's only 25, and we could be wrong, right? But for me, that is a big red flag. That's like very worrying. Of all the things, that is the most worrying. I mean, an example of somewhat fixing or remedying this problem would be like intelligence, strength, vitality, and magic could all affect, like, your stats could all affect the skills you use. So if you have a high, like, say your magic is the highest, maybe you could add cold, poison, or fire damage to your whirlwind. Or if your strength is really high, you add physical damage and physical resistance, etc. Life on hit for vitality, or life leech, etc. Or life on kill. And then dexterity, you could add in critical hit chance, or you could add hit accuracy in. You know, there's things you could do that are pretty simple, that would have another extremely complex and diverse layer to basic skills before we even kit them out with legendaries, and then with rune words, and with the actual skill tree. I think there's definitely stuff that needs to be done, because the skill tree right now is too basic. It's way too basic. It's just basically, are you playing Whirlwind A or Whirlwind B? Are you playing Upheaval A or Upheaval B? And it's so basic. Your build doesn't feel like your build, because everybody else is playing the same build and has the same legendary on with the same affects. And that is the way the game is going to be, or was in the beta. And that is not a good thing at all, in my opinion, for the future and the longevity of Diablo in the end game. Because it's going to become more about items rather than your build, more than how you've set your build up or how you've tailored your skills to interact with stuff. It's just going to be, oh, I need to find this item because this item multiplies the one skill that I use by 50 times. And it's just not a good system. I thought they were going to try and get away from that after Diablo 3, but for some reason it seems like we're going back in the old ground, and that's what they're going for, which is not a good thing at all, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. It is only level 25. It is only a beta. We do have to temper our views until we have the full picture, really. But right now, that's sort of what it's looking like to me. Maybe. Another big problem I have with the game is the fucking terrible UI. Like, it's terrible. First of all, I want to know more information about my debuffs and my buffs. Like, I want to know how much more cold damage I need to take before I'm frozen. Or I want to know how much cold damage they need to take before they're frozen. You know what I mean? I want to know exactly what's going on. How long my curse is active for. Why what's the threshold for the curse, etc. We don't know these things because there's no option to put them on. And it's not very clearly communicated. The only ones that are clearly communicated, in my opinion, bleed damage is pretty well communicated. And that's about it, really. That is about it. That's the only one. And invulnerable when the health bar goes blue. They're the two that are pretty well communicated. But the rest are not really well communicated. Like, I need to know a threshold for poison, like, so I know if they're poisoned or not. Same for my character. I want to know exactly what buffs I've got on right now. I know we have the little square above the health bar, but it just, well, above the skill bar, but it isn't really well communicated to me. Not at all. I'd like to know more. I'd like to know exactly what's going on with my character and exactly what's going on with the enemies I'm facing. Or at least give me the option to where I can go that in depth and know exactly how many health points I've got, exactly how many magic points I've got, exactly how, do you know what I mean? I want to know everything sometimes. So we need more in-depth sort of UI customization, 100%. There's also a lack of loot filter, which is a problem as well, in my opinion. I mean, I've already touched on the itemization, but there's a big problem with green arrow up and green arrow down. There's also a big problem with it's not filtering out the shite that you don't want. I mean, it literally got to the point where I was just rather running back to the shop and just selling everything. I was just running back to the armor salvage and just salvaging all items apart from legendary, which is another problem with the game. That's not a good loop for the game. That's very similar to Diablo 3 again, which I do have a problem with. I prefer the more methodical, slow pace of, say, Diablo 2 and Path. Well, actually, I prefer somewhere in the middle of Path of Exile and no, somewhere in the middle of Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. Diablo 2 is a little bit slower with not enough mobs. Diablo 3 is way too fast with way too many mobs. So for me, I would need something in between. But either way, that's a problem I have with the salvage and things like that. It's a repetitive loop that shouldn't be repeating itself at level 25. Although we know that the item drops are tuned higher, which in itself may cause more issues with character balance. So that's something that definitely need to sort. Another problem I have with the UI in particular is the font and the way everything is presented for the most part, right? So we're in this dark, gothic, bleak world, right? With demons and there's blood everywhere, and it feels very gothic and very satanic, right? That's how it feels. Yet for some reason, the font for all the items and characters is bland. It's like Arial bold or something. It's unbelievably bland, like a mobile game, like a placeholder. It needs to be gothic. I know it's a small thing, but it really does it breaks somewhat immersion and takes it away from the overall tone and atmosphere of the game, in my opinion, a little bit. Don't get me wrong, it's not a huge thing, but it definitely takes away from the immersion to an extent. And it takes away from that gothic tone that the game is going for. In my opinion, it adds a bit of dissonance between the UI and the tone and atmosphere and story the game is trying to tell and the world it's trying to engross you in. It puts dissonance between that and the information you are collecting. And I could say the same about the health bar and the mana bar and the skill bar. I mean, it might seem like a small thing, but I don't know why they haven't somewhat tried to do an individual one for each character. So, like, for example, I don't know, the Necromancer, his skill bar and his mana, or his essence and his health, the way that's presented could be like with broken bones and twisted corpses, and it could be all gothic and dark with Necromancer. And then with the Barbarian, his could be swords and shields and, things like that, like brass and warrior-ish. And then you get like, for example, the Druid could be like wolves' heads coming together with a health bar underneath. And it could just be more personalised to each character to feel like you're playing a different character. To feel like there's something unique about this character. Oh, I'm playing the Druid. His health bar looks like two wolves holding a goblet, and and the Necromancer, it's all twisted in souls, and it's all like bones decrepit and twisted together and morphed together. A bit like Alien, I guess. A bit like H.R. Geiger's sort of Lovecraftian sort of thing. And then you could have like the mage could be like, his health bar could be on a book somehow. Like, there's so many things they could have done to get creative with the UI to just add immersion and add a bit more sort of tone and originality to the game and to the classes that you play. But instead, they're all generic. It's very generic. And then another problem I have is the lack of skills on the actual skill bar. Like, there needs to be one more. You should be able to have all your skills on at once. Like, all the skills that you've selected, you should be able to have them all at once. You shouldn't be limited. That's another big problem I see. Like, there should be more, and the skills should be much better defined on what you actually got on your skill bar. It's poorly implemented. Same with the cooldowns. Same with the resource generation. It's poorly implemented, in my opinion. These are the things that need to be fixed. Now, these are more personal rather than an objective take. I don't like always online, personally. I mean, I don't mind players being in my town, a bit like Path of Exile. That doesn't bother me. That makes me feel like we're all on our own journey. We've all come back to the town to sell stuff, repair stuff, you know, tinker with things, imprint on stuff. But I don't like it when I'm roaming the open world and it's dark and it's blizzardy and it's atmospheric, and then I see some other guy that's come in and steamroll all my mobs. Like, it just totally breaks the immersion for me. Totally breaks the immersion that I'm this character doing this quest to stop Lilith, and this guy's just come in and murdered everything in seconds. I don't know who he is, and he has fucking bright pink armor or red armor. It's not good. Like, I feel like we should have people in the towns, that's fair enough, but there should be an option to when you're in your own instance in the open world or in dungeons or in large areas, you should be able to do those solo or have the option to just play offline entirely. Because I feel like for me, it would be a better experience if I could play offline or just have a private game where only my friends that I want to play with can join this server, rather than having to see random people coming around, killing my mobs, breaking the immersion I have in the game. Because the music, atmosphere and graphics are fantastic. Probably the best in any ARPG I've ever seen, right? Probably the best. But that's a big problem because, it creates dissonance. Am I playing this decrepit, cold, dark sort of storyline with this tone that's gothic and satanic? Or am I playing the fucking looter MMO where everyone's got flying different coloured mounts and all this? Like, it breaks the immersion a little bit for me. And it breaks the sort of fantasy I have for a Diablo game where it's very personal, the actual journey itself. So that's sort of the feedback I have for that. Another bit of feedback I have, and this is a bit of it's not a smaller issue, it's a big issue, but I'm going to just touch on it because I know a lot of other content creators and things like that have gone over this to the high heavens, right? And that is the repetitive dungeons and backtracking. See, I'm hoping that there's like a tile set for bosses in each act. So like in Act 1, there's maybe 10 different bosses that can spawn in dungeons, varying in difficulty, varying in item drop. And then you just get unlucky if you get one 3 times in a row or whatever. And I'm hoping Act 2 has 10 different that can only spawn in Act 2. Act 3 has 10 different that can only spawn in Act 3. Progressively getting harder with bigger item find, more mechanics. That's my hope for the dungeons, but I'm worried that that might not be the case. There might just be 20 bosses spread over, I don't know, 100, well, they said 150, haven't they? Well over 100 dungeons, and that's it. That's all you're getting. You just get bigger health pool, hit harder and harder difficulties. But I hope that isn't the case. I also hope they look at the design of the dungeons themselves, which is nothing worse than having to go and put 2 things on pedestals and then open a door or kill every enemy in this dungeon. That is the worst one. I mean, I thought we'd evolved past that in ARPGs. I thought it was like we'd fixed that. You know, we've killed 85% of the mobs, or kill 1 elite, or kill 5 elites. Instead of having to kill every single mob in a dungeon, it becomes tedious. When you're doing runs for rare drops, you don't want tedium. It's going to be repetitive by nature because you're doing the same content over and over again, but it needs to be as free and as sort of quick and trying to think of the right word here. It needs to be as optimally as possible. Like, you need to be able to just, okay, I know I need to run through this one. I know four groups of elites spawn. I'm going to farm these. I'm going to farm them. Got a legendary. Go back again. Reset dungeon. Do the same. It needs to be like a rinse and repeat process that can be optimally done. Not go, you know, it's tedious. It's tedium. Going back and forward, putting different stones and pedestals, opening doors. You know, the maps are very maze-like. So I think there's definitely a lot to be criticised with the dungeons. Now, my hope is for the full release of the game. By the way, I've just got bullet points on the screen. This has been a totally unscripted video. My first real big sort of deep dive on the game. My ideas and hopes for the game, right, are that Blizzard look at itemization and make it so, for example, rare items can be better than legendaries, I'm not sure I like the imprinting system. I feel like that just might make every weapon viable, which I'm not quite sure I like. I also think they need to look at more niche ways to improve itemization for builds. Like, no more multipliers. It could be something like when you channel a whirlwind for 5 seconds, you channel a second whirlwind. Or this something, something like that. Or when you use fireball, you cast 3 fireballs every 5 hits. Or just stuff that are more niche and more build defining, rather than, when you cast a fireball, have a chance to spawn a bigger fireball that does 50% critical damage or whatever. Like, you need to be more niche and change how you play the game rather than just multiply what you've got in the game already. That's the problem I have. I mean, we're only at level 25, so we don't really know. The class balance is a big problem as well, as is the essence and resource generation for the barbarian and the druid. It's not too bad for the barbarian, but the druid in particular, bullshit. Absolute bullshit. There should be a way to regenerate essence that is way less tedious and way less annoying for the druid. I mean, we're only level 25, so maybe that could change in the late game. I'm just not quite sure, to be honest. I'm really not. Right, guys, if you like the video, please give me a like and subscribe. I am going to do more content like this, related to Diablo, related to all games pretty much in general. I love gaming, I love video games. I am currently playing through Resident Evil 4 Remake, and I'm playing through Diablo 2 Resurrected for the first time. So I'm going to be giving my thoughts and opinions on them, unsolicited and just honest. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.